name is Shamini Pereira and I'm the Chief Curator of the Museum of Modern Contemporary Art Sri Lanka. The museum is a new initiative which is bold and it's long-term. We are trying to establish a permanent facility to showcase modern and contemporary art from Sri Lanka. We are currently based in a wonderful new location at the Crestcap Boulevard, and for us this is absolutely in line with what we want to do as a museum, which is what we want to make sure this is a museum for the public. So situated where we are now, we have the opportunity to engage with many more people than perhaps we would have imagined in the context of the shopping mall. And we're hoping that people will visit us, perhaps to come in and take refreshments, to go and have lunch, to do their shopping, but also to take in what the museum has to offer. We're also very close by to a number of schools, so there's an opportunity there to engage also many students, and that's something that's a huge priority to us too, because this is an education-driven initiative by and large. What do we do as a museum? We do mount lots of exhibitions, or we are involved with creating and curating exhibitions, but they are meant to be exhibitions that have meaning and relevance to the general public, including students. And to be able to do that, what we have done is made sure that our public programs that accompany them are not only free, but they are offered in 3 languages, so that people who are walking into these, to our space, are also able to find out a bit more about what they're seeing on the walls. We have information that is there for them to read, of course, but what we are offering are different events throughout the week which enable them to hear more about some of the stories that connect the artworks that we have selected, to also have conversations with an amazing group of what we call visitor educators. In conversation with the Lanka and painting, we have put together quite a diverse variety of materials. On the one side, we've put together various films and paintings and ephemera, coins and stamps that were really about the 1976 Non-Aligned Summit when it took place in Sri Lanka. Right next to that, there is this wonderful vitrine where we have placed a whole, perhaps selection, if you like, of materials that are in published format. These are journals, and they hold amazing writing that was happening, which was part of something called the Afro-Asian Writers Bureau. In the vitrine, there are a selection of publications which are published by a group of people who were called the Afro-Asian Writers Bureau. And these were writers and poets who came together to think about the solidarity movement of the non-aligned member states through writing, seeing writing as a very powerful way to think about anti-imperial fight, a fight against anti-imperialism, and to think about how the solidarity movement could be talked about through words and in and across several languages as well. And we're bringing together in the vitrine a number of publications, namely one that was published called The Call, which was in fact published in Sri Lanka. And there was a person who was Sri Lankan, the Secretary General, Mr. R.D. Senanayake, who was a very pivotal figure in the creation of that journal. And we're showing actually work, the product of his work, but also we have an exhibit in the journal, in the vitrine, which is a book given to him by Mao Zedong when he visited Peking. And that is also a piece of the exhibition that many people should come and have a look at, and perhaps puts another perspective on how this non-aligned movement was being thought about through literature. Encounters focuses on two collections of art in Sri Lanka. They're very well known by name, but most people probably won't know what the artworks are that sit in these collections. The first one is the John Keel's Holdings Art Collection, and the second one is the George Keep Foundation's art collections. And these were our two starting points. We chose 6 artworks from each of these two collections, and we used each of these 6 works as the starting point to build 6 displays. So those 6 displays make up Encounters. And Encounters took its name because with each of the works that started the display, we've brought into a conversation with that artwork other artworks, whether it's a photograph, whether it's a publication, whether it's a film, to create a conversation between the two, hence Encounters being the title of the exhibition. The 6 displays are on view to the public from February till the end of August, and what we're doing is we're rotating the displays. Like many museums, we don't have the space to be able to show our exhibitions or our displays in one go, so we're rotating them. And after the first rotation, which shows 3 of the displays, we will be rotating out 2 of them rather, and bringing in a 4th display, and so on and so forth until we've shown all 6 of the displays. Education plays a central role in all of the work that we are doing in trying to establish this museum for the country. Its focus on modern and contemporary art is something that perhaps is not necessarily accessible to many people, as they might wonder what is modern art and what is contemporary. So therefore education and our learning experiences that go with our exhibitions are key to helping people perhaps engage with something that they're not normally familiar with. So we are, in terms of education, we offer a public program of events, and that happens throughout the course of our exhibitions, and these are free to the public, and they are targeted at different groups of people with different interests. So sometimes we offer workshops perhaps for junior school, or we're offering workshops that might be for a more general audience. We also have a group of people who are located in the galleries called visitor educators, who are there to make the visitor experience something more engaging. So they can direct visitors towards information if they want to read more, but they can also have a conversation with them, and they're trained to talk about whether it's a gallery of artworks or a specific artwork in a little bit more detail. Another aspect of our education programs is that we are offering most of what we do in 3 languages. So you can also come and visit and have a tour conducted in Sinhala or in Tamil. Equally, if you want to read more, we have that information in Sinhala and in Tamil, which is in the gallery itself, or you can go and see it and read it at your leisure on our website. looks at the themes of love and friendship, two very popular themes. But they're doing it through two works. And the two works are very different. One is made by a contemporary artist, Pradeep Talawatha, and the other is by George Keat, a member of the 43 group and considered to be one of Sri Lanka's pioneer modernist artists. The Keat work was our starting point for this particular display, and it shows two heads. And when we came to research the work, what we discovered was on the back of the painting, it said two heads and in brackets, the friends. But when we came to look at it, what we discovered on the front was that, of course, there are two heads, but there seemed to be more between the way in which Keat was showing the relationship between these two heads, more than friendship. And in our research, we came across another drawing by Keat, which was of a very similar composition, which was titled not The Friends, but it was called Mithuna, the Lovers. So with these two pieces of information and looking at the painting, we looked and thought about whether they're friends or maybe if they're lovers, whether these were also a man and a woman, two men or two women. Because what we can notice in this painting is that the way Keat is describing the two heads is he's not making it very clear whether one is male or one is female. They feel more like they come across as two very gender neutral figures. Or you could look at them and perhaps see that maybe the male figure looks more feminized. And what we wanted to do was think about a display that looked at images of femininity or looked at images that looked at masculinity, but mainly to look at images or other artworks that explored relationships, friendships, what the differences between, or where friendship begins and where friendship ends, and when you become more intimate, when you would describe someone with more intimacy, or when they would perhaps be called a lover. So what we did is we put Pradeep Talawatha's work into a conversation with the Keat. And the Pradeep's work is very expressively an image of masculinity. You can see a group of young males. And in fact, I can point out Pradeep, the artist, is here featured in this artwork. Pradeep is in fact featured next to a group of his own friends at the time who he came to know because he lived with them. This is a group of roommates, in fact. And Pradeep is looking at us, and they, as you can see, are very familiar with one another in the way that they're posed. They are very physical with one another, they're touching one another, their bodies are brushing up against one another. So there's an intimacy here that we can see also perhaps crossing back over to the what we've already seen in the Keat that is also reflected in the Pradeep Talawatha. But the interesting element of the Talawatha is that this group of friends are also connected through other relationships, namely through what you can see in this work, which are all the bottle caps, which also make up this artwork. And the bottle caps are a particular brand of arak. And the arak in question is something that obviously this group of friends have enjoyed drinking, and the arak is something that connects them, is something that, as we all would recognize, is something that when we go out, when we go to dinner, we share food, we share different types of drinks with our friends. It's something that begins to define not just social relationships, a drink, but our socio-economic relationships, because this particular arak brand is something commonly bought by upper working class men and enjoyed as something, a pastime between them. So in this work by Pradeep, we're looking at perhaps something that is a kind of image of friendship defined through them being flatmates, but an image of friendship defined through the things that they enjoy to drink together. But the other element of this work, and why we wanted to bring it into conversation with the Keat, is because of its title. In thinking about the title, Pradeep decided to call it Ati Vishesha, which means, when you translate it into English, extra special, which is in fact the name of the arak brand. but it's also perhaps a nice way or a term of endearment to describe that kind of friendship where it's really about a closeness and an intimacy. Perhaps also why, again, we decided to bring it into a kind of conversation with the keet where that ambiguity between whether these keet figures are just friends or if they're more than friends. Focuses on representations of the family, and the starting point for display 3 is a painting by George Keat titled Pounding Paddy from 1952. And the painting shows a family, and what makes it a family is the inclusion by Keat of a small child. Without the child, it might not be seen as a family, or our intention perhaps was to look at this by regarding it as a family and a family unit. And what we've brought it into conversation with are other artworks by artists, not Keat, but by Asa Rasaya, Richard Gabriel and Nirma Vasan, who explore images of the family that begin to see the family not as a single unit, but as something that can be a unit that maybe is in conflict. In the case of the Richard Gabriels, where you see a male and a female, where the male figure has turned his back and is looking away from the family, and the woman stands at the forefront of the painting and she's holding the two children. Another Richard Gabriel shows the same woman almost with one child, and he has his hand in front of his face, and the painting is called, or the print is called, The Frightened Child. In this image, we don't see any male, we don't see anyone else other than the single parent. It's almost like an image of anxiety as well as being an image of a single parent. The other and last work that we show in display 3 is an amazing installation by a contemporary artist called Nirma Vasan. And Nirma Vasan is the only artist in display 3 that actually creates his work by the stories that he looks to that are from his own family. And he begins by making the work by talking to an aunt in his family. And from there, she asks him to go and talk to other members of the community. And they each tell him a story which is about their own losses. And what Nirma Vasan does is record their images. And these charcoal drawings hold their stories, but they also perhaps hold the story too of the fact that today, although we might belong to families, some of us have lost them through many different circumstances, but how, even though we might see family as the unit, today more and more we are also part of something outside of a family, which is a community. And it's the community too that perhaps is really touched on as an important part of the extended family in Nirmavasan's work. With everything that we do with education, because it's such a priority to us and we want to see the visitor experience as one that we describe as a learning opportunity, we are very grateful for the support that we have to make these programs possible, and we've been able to deliver these programs thanks to the support of the John Keel's Foundation as well as the Nation's Trust Bank. And specifically with this exhibition, we've received tremendous support from the European Union for funding our education programs, as well as the Goethe Institute, Sri Lanka.